Welcome to Dune Chapter by Chapter. I'm Dominic. So, in the last video, we had that battle between Paul and Jamis, and Paul ended up defeating Jamis, killed him, and from that chapter, it showed that him and Jessica were still navigating how to, integrate themselves into Fremen culture and stuff like that, and we're learning a lot more about Fremen culture. And we've been with Paul and Jessica for a while in the last few chapters of this book, but now we've taken a switch to Geidi Prime, where there is a gladiatory match that is about to take place between a gladiator slave and Feyd-Rautha. And also in this chapter, we have Count Fenring and Lady Fenring in this one. So the chapter starts off, we're on Geidi Prime, and the Baron Harkonnen is meeting up with Count Fenring and Lady Fenring. And as they're on their way, they're looking through you kind of get a bit of a description of Geidi Prime in the beginning of this chapter. As they're going through, they're noticing how everything is decorated and painted and really gone out of their way to make everything look good, and for this event for Feyd. And they're trying, but at the same time, on Geidi Prime, the Baron is trying to hide the squalor, because as they look, like all the streets that they're headed towards, going down towards the arena, you could see everything's painted nice, everything's decorated nice with all these nice banners, and so they're really forcing to put on a show, I guess, that everyone's excited about this and everyone's happy about this, but they can still see down some of the alleyways and see like the squalor and the garbage and and the people who live in it and things like that. So you get to see a very different contrast between how Geidi Prime is and how Caladan is and how the people are treated and stuff as they go there. And they're there to kind of observe. They want to see what Feyd-Rautha is like, because Count Fenring's, one of his wife is the Bene Gesserit. She's part of the Bene Gesserit. And not only that, they want to kind of check on the Baron, because Count Fenring, he is one of the main men that is with the Emperor, Shaddam IV. So they go in there, and him and the Baron meet up, and so they decide, we have to talk in private, talk about stuff. What's interesting about this is you get the sense in this chapter when they're talking about everything that went on, Fenring he's almost like interrogating the Baron. They go into this almost like a cone of silence thing, like this dead zone where no one can hear their voices that the Baron has set up there. And you can tell from this that the Baron really underestimates the Fremen in this situation. And he doesn't, he may suspect that Paul and Jessica are still alive, but he's not ready to give that information up. He's just going to tell Fenring, oh, well, they're dead, that's it. And so Fenring's kind of, asking the Baron, how do you know they're dead? And what's the deal? What's going on with these Fremen? And all this kind of thing. And you get the sense that if the Baron is underestimating the Fremen, the Emperor certainly isn't underestimating the Fremen, just from the questioning that's going on there. And then for the first time in the book, this is the second time Feyd appears in the book. First time, we haven't seen him since the very beginning of the book, when he was having to overhear the plan between Piter and the Baron Harkonnen. So this is probably going to be Feyd's first appearance in the upcoming film that's coming out in 2021. Or, if the film that's coming out in 2021 does well, and we get the second half, this will be his appearance in the second half of Dune. Instead of, because I don't think he's going to be in the first one at all. I think they're going to do something with that scene so he's not in it. And so anyway, Paul meets Count Fenring and Lady Fenring, and then he wants to offer out, he finds Lady Fenring very attractive, Feyd, as soon as he lays his eyes on her, and he wants to have one of his kills kind of like called out in her name, in her honor and stuff, and then she flat out refuses and says, no, I don't want that. And it's almost because he's too blatantly making a pass at her, and the Baron doesn't want him to piss off Count Fenring, because this Count Fenring guy is pretty dangerous. He's someone you don't want to mess with. And so then Feyd heads down and gets ready for his battle. Now, most of his matches are kind of like just for show. like a setup. Like they have these slaves, they got them all drugged up that make them more scared than normal, make them more terrified, and then also make them kind of groggy. So it's an easy match. It's an easy kill for Feyd with these gladiators. But Feyd and Thufir kind of have a scheme set up to get one more of Feyd's loyal men in place of one of the Baron's loyal men, because Feyd's kind of plotting against his own uncle in this thing. So they have an actual slave set up that's not drugged, and he's actually a former Atreides man. But Feyd doesn't know this at this point. He just thinks it's going to be a slave that hasn't been drugged, and then it'll look like an assassination attempt on Feyd. And then he can set it up on the slave master and have him taken out and executed, then have one of his more loyal guys put in place. So this is a scheme he cooked up with Thufir. And what he's done is he has almost like a hypnotic word that he can say to this guy that'll make him almost like his muscles paralyzed. So even though the guy's not drugged, Feyd still isn't in real danger. And the word is scum. But what Feyd doesn't realize, when this gladiator comes out, he's actually an Atreides guy. He's one of the Atreides men. So, and this is not just some ordinary slave, and he hasn't been drugged up like the other guys, and he knows how to fight, and he's ready. So this is an actual real challenge to Feyd. This guy could potentially kill Feyd. And so, but if Feyd wins this, and everyone realizes, well, this was an assassination attempt, and Feyd actually kills this guy, it's going to create all this tremendous favor on Geidi Prime for him, and it'll make him look like a real hero. So he sees the guy and he realizes, oh, I was kind of double-crossed there. This guy knows what he's doing. So it kind of makes you wonder, was there another plan inside this plan? Was Thufir helping Feyd, but at the same time taking this as an opportunity to hopefully get rid of Feyd or get him taken out of the picture? And so they end up doing battle, and Feyd still has some other tricks up his sleeve. He has a white glove and a black glove, and each knife that he has in each one of these gloves, one blade is poisonous and one isn't. And it's always supposed to be the white one. The white one is supposed to have the poisonous blade. But Feyd is being deceitful here, and it's actually his black glove with the blade in that one. That's the one that has the poison blade. So they end up battling it out, fighting and stuff. And Feyd ends up defeating the guy. He uses the word on him. But what's interesting, the guy says, oh, before he dies, someone's going to get you. An Atreides will get you someday, Feyd. And then, but the guy's able to actually fall on his own sword and kill himself before the paralyzing drug actually kicks in. So, but what's interesting I find about the whole gladiator match is it comes right after Paul's fight. This fight with Feyd. So in the last chapter, Paul fought Jamis in that battle, knife fight with no shield, no nothing like that. What's interesting about that battle is Paul is put in a situation where he's at a disadvantage because he's not used to fighting without a body shield, and his opponent is. So his opponent actually has an advantage on him in that respect. So Paul has to alter his whole thing. So it shows how he is can think on his feet, and the situation's kind of against him. Where this situation is kind of the opposite, where Feyd is doing all these things. The whole thing is just like a show, a setup, like a circus act. He's just to make himself look better, even though he wasn't expecting this guy to be an Atreides fighting man. So, he's got the blades. He's cheating with that. He's got the blade that's not supposed to be poison. That's actually the poison one. And then he's got the word he can utter to paralyze the other guy, the word scum. So it just shows the contrast between the two. I think that's what I think is interesting. And it's almost like where Paul has a lot of honor and won't go out of his way to do underhanded tricks like that. Feyd will do whatever he can to win. Like he doesn't have that kind of like moral compass. And it also gets to show that Feyd is a pretty formidable fighter on his own. And the other thing is, Feyd is kind of portrayed as, I find in the book, he's like a foil to Paul, because they're about the same age. And but he's almost like an anti-Paul Atreides, Feyd-Rautha is. That's kind of what I notice when I read the book. And the other thing, he's actually part of the bloodline to create the Kwisatz Haderach. Because if you remember in the previous chapters, when the Reverend Mother confronted Jessica about this, about her having a boy with the Duke, she said, you were supposed to have a girl. So Paul was supposed to be a girl, and he was actually supposed to be wedded to Feyd-Rautha, and then their offspring would have been a boy, and then that one was supposed to be the Kwisatz Haderach, but he basically came early, and he's thrown off the Bene Gesserit's plans. So he's actually, so you can almost look at Feyd as almost like a potential Kwisatz Haderach. And so Count Fenring and his wife, they're basically there to be the Emperor's eyes and ears, and they're there to see, well, we want to kind of, the Emperor wants to see if, you know, your successor here, Feyd, is actually worthy enough to be the next Baron. And so it shows how much actual power the Emperor has too, that he can actually intervene and decide, you know, if you have an heir or whatever that he doesn't think is worthy, he can actually block that one. So that's what they're there to see. But after they witness this battle that Feyd has with this Atreides fighting man, this gladiator slave, and Feyd wins and kills the guy, and then he's held up as this huge hero, and he's got a lot of popularity with the people on Geidi Prime. Count Fenring and his wife then decide, well, you know, they kind of start comparing him to Paul, like, you know, he's so much like Paul, but how, you know, he's like where he's raised by the, you know, the Harkonnen, and he's born in the Harkonnen environment. They almost see it as a waste, because if he had been like in the same, how would he have been if he was raised by, say, the Atreides? He would have been a lot like Paul, where they think, and they don't know that at this point, they don't really know if Paul's still alive or not. So what they do is they decide, well, we got to preserve this bloodline in case something happens. You know, there's a lot of potential there in Feyd, but they kind of see that, well, Feyd's just going to be like the Baron, so he might be a complete write-off in the future. We don't know, but we still got to, you know, preserve that genetic material. So then, you know, Count Fenring's wife just says, well, you know, I'll end up seducing him while we're here. And then her husband says, well, are you sure he can? And she goes, of course I can. You see how he was looking at me earlier? I can totally seduce him. And the Bene Gesserit, they're trained in all these ways. They can totally seduce the guy and all that. So they have all like this, I guess, like sexual power. And so that's their plan, is they're going to, Count Fenring and his wife, they're going to preserve that line for the Bene Gesserit long-term breeding program. And she's actually going to seduce Feyd-Rautha, or that's what her plan is anyway. And then end up getting impregnated with his, you know, with his seed, and end up having a kid for him. And then the Bene Gesserit can control whether they have a boy or a girl. That's the other thing. Like the Bene Gesserit has like a complete control over their body. And then the other interesting thing is you have Thufir Hawat here, who's working with Feyd to probably overthrow his uncle, but at the same time maybe trying to get rid of Feyd too, because he's still an Atreides guy, even though he's stuck on Geidi Prime. And that's the other thing Count Fenring was asking, why did you keep this guy alive? He's an Atreides guy. But the Baron just says, but he is, why waste such a perfectly good mentat? Like, he's one of the best mentats around. Why waste that? You know, I'm gonna keep him and use him for my own end gains, which I don't know if that's a smart thing or not. But this, I thought, was a really good chapter, and I like the battle, and it really shows off the difference between Feyd and Paul Atreides. And when I kind of remember reading through it this time, it's like you kind of remember stuff differently. It's like, it seems like I remember Feyd having a lot more, I guess, time in the novel than what he actually did. So now it makes more sense why he's not in the first Dune film that's coming out, because he was only in like one brief scene at the beginning of the book, or one chapter, and then I guess they're saving his full appearance for this scene to be in the movie. And hopefully we get the second movie. But I really like this chapter, and it was another kind of a nice break to get away from Arrakis and kind of get a look at Geidi Prime again and how everything is going on there. Interesting stuff. So that's everything I got to say in this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section, and I will see you at the next one.